In the yearnings of the elves who dwelt in Eregion, there arose a desire for beauty everlasting, a craft so fine it would rival the glorious works of Valinor. Great among the Noldorin smiths was Celebrimbor, grandson of Feanor, who presided over the Gwaith Myrdain, the brotherhood of the jewelsmiths. It was in the days following the forging of lesser rings, trifles of skill yet wonders to the mortal eye, that a stranger arrived at the gates. He named himself Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and his voice was mellifluous, steeped in a knowledge of craft unknown even to the wise. He flattered the Gwaith Myrdain with words of admiration, declaring that he had come to share lore gleaned from Owl himself. Though suspicion flickered in the hearts of some, Galadriel chief among them, the craftsman's eagerness for new wonders lured them close to his side. Yet in this imagined turning of fate, Celebrimbor did not readily accept Anatar's tutelage. Instead, upon discerning subtle shadows in Anatar's demeanor, and suspecting that this stranger's knowledge exceeded that of any child of Iluvatar, Celebrimbor chose to delay the forging of any mighty ring in Anatar's presence. Rather than summoning his best smiths to test this new friend's counsel, Celebrimbor consulted first with Galadriel, asking her wisdom. She cautioned him with the memory of the exiles and their tragic reliance on crafts of power that often bore hidden perils. Heeding her words, Celebrimbor remained vigilant. Thus, when Anatar offered to forge powerful rings that would grant dominion over minds and matter, Celebrimbor refused. "How came you by such knowledge?" the elf lord inquired, as crisp winds carried the sweet scent of pine from the mountains. "Long have we labored at our forge fires, gleaning and refining the teachings of Aule through countless ages, yet never have we heard tell of the mastery you now speak of." Anatar smiled, but behind his eyes flickered a threat. "All knowledge in this world is gleaned from the divine smith, and from the building of Arda itself. Such secrets I have come to share out of reverence for the wonders you create." But Celebrimbor did not waver, and he declined Anatar's guidance. The Gwaith Myrdain observed all with caution, for their lord had bidden them keep watch. They marveled at Celebrimbor's firmness, for he was not easily swayed, though he yearned for deeper craft. And so there was a rift in the bond that might have formed. Suspicion and courtesy warred with one another in those early days. Indeed, courtesy prevailed enough that the stranger was not cast from Eregion's gates. Yet Anatar found himself barred from the innermost forges and the arcane texts of the Gwaith Myrdain. In time, he would depart Eregion with ominous courtesy, vowing to return. In the months that followed Anatar's departure, Celebrimbor found himself haunted by doubt. The Gwaith Myrdain were uneasy, for they had glimpsed potential in Anatar's words, imagined a future in which the elves could preserve their realms unfaded by the passage of time. There were whispers among the lesser smiths that Celebrimbor's caution had robbed them of a chance to achieve wonders beyond measure. Yet the elf lord remained resolute. He took counsel often with Galadriel and Celeborn, who dwelt for a time nearby in Eregion. At Galadriel's urging, Celebrimbor began forging lesser artifacts of preservation, subtle cords that protected gardens from frost, jewels that shone with starlight in the darkest night, and circlets that fostered the growth of certain rare plants. Such crafts he made in quiet, ensuring they carried no hidden malice, for he had no desire to dominate or subjugate. Indeed, Eregion flourished anew with these small blessings. Still, Celebrimbor's gaze often drifted eastward, and he wondered at Anatar's purpose. If the stranger had truly been sincere, the realm might well have gained immeasurable lore. But Celebrimbor took to heart the caution that a boon too easily won might disguise a snare. Meanwhile, Anatar journeyed in secret across the lands, sowing cunning seeds of discord in other quarters. If the elves of Eregion would not receive him wholeheartedly, he would look elsewhere to plant his cunning designs. And so to the east and the south he went. Some say he even ventured near the realms of men, whispering that new powers and knowledge were near at hand if they but welcomed him. Yet for a time, Eregion knew peace. The refusal to collude with Anatar had not spelled doom, and the Gwaith Myrdain, though they had lost the potential for swift mastery, labored with renewed vigor in their forges. They discovered secrets of gem setting and subtle enchantments that, if lesser in might than Anatar's promised power, were free from the taint of dark dominion. As the years slid by, rumors of Anatar's presence in other lands reached Eregion. Galadriel perceived deeper shadows in these tidings, convinced that Anatar was no mere elven lord under a different name, but a being of older malice. It was whispered he wore the raiment of fair form, but that under it lay the fallen Maya, Sauron, once the herald and master lieutenant of Morgoth himself. A dreadful surmise gripped Galadriel. She told Celebrimbor that his refusal alone might not be enough to safeguard the West, for should Anatar find a welcome among men whose hearts were more easily corrupted, the forging of great rings could yet be accomplished, but for an evil end. Celebrimbor's spirit kindled in fury at the thought. The forging of powerful artifacts for dominion was an abomination to his craft. Had not Feanor's greatest works wrought sorrow enough? Seeking to prepare a defense, Celebrimbor and Galadriel conferred with Gil-galad, High King of the Noldor, in Lindon. Warned of the rising shadow, Gil-galad began to fortify his realm's borders, dispatching heralds to gather intelligence. Eregion itself, though friendly with Khazad-dûm, recognized the growing need for vigilance. Galadriel, perceiving that Anatar's designs were widespread, resolved to leave Eregion, setting forth for Lorredan, later Lothlorien. The parting was bittersweet, for Celebrimbor relied upon her insight and counsel. Before departing, Galadriel placed her hand gently on Celebrimbor's brow. "You have done well, Celebrimbor of the House of Feanor. In refusing Anatar's gifts, you have spared many woes. Yet we are all set upon a path of vigilance, for evil ever seeks to worm its way into the hearts of the unwary." With that she departed, leaving Celebrimbor to the forging fires that crackled ominously within the halls of the Gwaithai Myrdain. Alone within his private workshop, Celebrimbor grew uneasy at the knowledge that Anatar might strike alliances outside Elvendom. Indeed, there were dark murmurings that some dwarven clans beyond Khazad-dûm had come upon new smithing arts from an unknown teacher. Others whispered of certain tribes of men, newly enriched by potent artifacts, said to bestow luck or cunning in war. Though Celebrimbor had no direct proof that Anatar was behind these developments, he suspected as much. In Khazad-dûm, the dwarves of Durin's line remained loyal to their friendship with Eregion, yet trade routes brought tidings of far-off dwarven hulls enthralled by mysterious new devices. More troubling still, caravans of men traveled west from Rhûn carrying rare treasures. These were displayed in markets with whispered awe, though none could say plainly from whence such wonders came, or how they had been wrought. Mid these happenings, Celebrimbor endeavored to strengthen alliances. He forged new gifts for the dwarves of Khazad-dûm, fine circlets to magnify sight in the darkness of their minds, mithril-bound helms that would hold fast against orc blades. These gestures of camaraderie did much to bolster trust and keep the realm safe. Yet the sense of a gathering storm loomed ever larger, fed by distant rumors. In time, so the Watchers of Gil-galad's realm reported, Anatar had made contact with petty kings of men in the east and south, forging rings of cunning power. 9 such rings found their way into the hands of those who thirsted for glory. Like a creeping vine, the influence of Sauron, for indeed Anatar was none other, spread among men who prized dominion above all else. Whether they knew it or not, they bartered their souls for a reflection of might. Word came also that lesser dwarven lords accepted rings of power that promised their minds would yield unceasing veins of gold and mithril. These were the 7, though in some accounts they numbered differently. And though the dwarves proved resilient to outright enslavement of their wills, a gnawing greed grew within them for precious metals and rare gems. The seeds of the shadow had been sown. It was Celebrimbor's great consolation that the elves of Eregion had refused to aid in forging these instruments of dominion. Yet the knowledge that evil rings now walked the earth brought him no comfort. If the forging had been accomplished without his skill, then Sauron's cunning ran even deeper than he had feared. For many years, Eregion stood untouched by open war, yet the air was taut with foreboding. Celebrimbor labored day and night, forging lesser devices of hidden might, words that might unbind or unravel the spells within the rings Sauron had created. Though he had not cast any ring to match the potency of the 9 or the 7, Celebrimbor's works were a gentle bulwark, offering a chance to resist. If the hearts of elves, men, or dwarves truly willed it, these wards could ease the thrall of Sauron's rings. So it was that Celebrimbor quietly dispatched these wards through secret allies and messengers. Many were lost on the roads. Others were disregarded by proud kings. Some, however, fell into the hands of wise hearts who recognized their import. A small but fierce network of free peoples, men, dwarves, and elves, began to gather under the banner of open defiance. All the while, Celebrimbor prayed that his refusal to forge the rings alongside Anatar would one day prove the undoing of the Dark Lord's plan. But Sauron at last unveiled his full malice. He had retreated to Mordor, building the fortress of Barad-dûr in the Land of Shadow. There, in secret, he wrought the One Ring, a master ring tethered to his very will. Celebrimbor's refusal had not stayed him from forging it alone, and though the Gwaithai Myrdain had never joined in forging that master ring, the cosmic resonance of such an artifact shook all who possessed any knowledge of craft. In the far corners of Middle-earth, a chill passed through those wise enough to sense it. Then began Sauron's open assault upon the west. With a vast army of orcs, trolls, and allied men who had sworn fealty to him, he pressed upon the free lands. Armed with the One Ring, he now sought to bend to his dominion all who had spurned him. Eregion was among his first targets, for Celebrimbor's defiance had kindled a terrible wrath in the Dark Lord. Realizing that war was at hand, Celebrimbor prepared the defenses of Ostin Eddil. Gil-galad sent troops of the Noldor from Lindon, led by Elrond, to aid Eregion in its hour of need. Dwarves from Khazad-dûm, stirred to anger at the aggression of orcish hosts near their gates, marched alongside their elven friends. Celebrimbor himself stood at the battlements, forging swords and armor with secret runes that might better withstand the envenomed blades of the enemy. The siege of Eregion began under a cloak of sorrow. Dark clouds massed overhead, as though the heavens themselves recoiled from the presence of Sauron. Siege engines and foul beasts battered the walls. Goblin archers rained black-fletched arrows upon the defenders. Yet the defenders' resolve was hardened by the knowledge that they had refused Sauron's cunning from the start. They would not now yield. For a time it seemed Eregion might hold. The combined might of elves and dwarfs stood fast, the skill of Celebrimbor's wards and weaponry fending off the invaders. In the main courtyard of Ostin Eddil, Celebrimbor oversaw the forging of new arrowheads, forging them swiftly in a white-hot blaze. Each was inscribed with runes to pierce the flesh of orcs and sour their black blood. Meanwhile, the hidden wards spread among the defenders kindled hope, warding hearts from the terror that Sauron's mere presence brought. Yet, the might of the One Ring was immense. When Sauron himself took the field, black lightning flashed across the sky. The will of the defenders bent beneath his malice, though not so swiftly as if they had borne lesser rings tied to him. Even so, grim losses mounted as the orcish tide surged again and again. At the height of battle, Celebrimbor retreated for a moment to the vaults beneath Ostin Eddil. There, among the hidden workshops, lay the sum of the Gwaithai Myrdain's research, along with a single great project he had guarded from all eyes. Though Celebrimbor had refused to co-forge with Sauron, he had experimented on his own with the knowledge gleaned from old texts. If the hearts of the Gwaithai Myrdain remained pure, perhaps a trio of rings could be devised that would preserve beauty and resist the slow decay of time. No dominion would they bestow, and no subjugation would they enforce. Instead, they would be a living song to preserve the memory of Valinor's light in Middle-earth. Galadriel's departure had convinced Celebrimbor to set aside these designs, yet he had not destroyed them. Their forging was incomplete, left in stasis behind locked doors. Now, as Eragon reeled beneath the relentless assault, Celebrimbor pondered if these 3 rings might yet become a bastion of hope against the One. He labored swiftly, forging them in secret while the defenders above fought desperately. Their final shaping drew upon all his skill, gleaned not from Sauron, but from the Noldorin tradition passed down through Feanor's line. Vilya, Narya, and Nenya they would be called, though in this alternate turning they shone differently than in the known histories. Had Celebrimbor made them under Anatar's guidance, they would have fallen beneath the One Ring's dominion. But here their forging was free of Sauron's touch, pure expressions of elvish craft. Each ring was set with a single gem: sapphire for Vilya, ruby for Narya, and a diamond-like adamant for Nenya. As Celebrimbor inscribed upon them words of blessing, the walls of the vault trembled with the reverberations of the battle above. He felt the forging of the One pulsating far off in Mordor, like a malevolent beacon in the dark. Yet he locked his will upon the brightness of Valinor's memory, singing the songs of Ear's creation, shaping that power into these rings so that they might resist the creeping shadow. When at last Celebrimbor emerged from the vaults, holding the 3 upon a silver cloth, the city was afire. Siege engines had breached the walls, and Sauron himself strode amid the chaos, crowned in a black helm. The defenders rallied around Elrond and the dwarven hosts, but the forces of darkness pressed them from all sides. With a heavy heart, Celebrimbor realized Eregion was lost. The host of evil was too vast, the black arts fueling it too potent. Yet he held one last hope in his hands. Summoning what remained of the defenders, he prepared a desperate evacuation, planning to carry the 3 rings away so that Sauron might never lay claim to them. The evacuation was bloody and frantic. Through narrow alleys and hidden passages, small companies of elves carrying wounded dwarves on improvised litters strove to break free of the encircled city. Smoke and screams mingled in a cataclysm of ruin. Yet the refusal of Celebrimbor to forge the rings with Sauron had subtly weakened the Dark Lord's hold on elvenkind. Sauron had poured much of his cunning into forging the One and subjugating those who bore the 9 and the 7. He anticipated claiming the rings Celebrimbor might have helped create, but the actual forging in Eregion was incomplete, save for the 3, which he did not suspect. As a result, Sauron's direct power over the Gwaithai Myrdain was far less than it could have been. The defenders retained enough autonomy to mount an organized retreat, something that in the original tale was marred by confusion and betrayal. In the end, Ost in Eärendil fell. Fires devoured workshops where lesser rings of skill had been wrought. The archives of the Gwaithai Myrdain were shattered, scattered across bloody streets. Few survived to carry the knowledge onward. Celebrimbor himself was mortally wounded in the fight, run through by an orc captain's cruel blade while covering the escape of a small band. Yet as he lay upon the broken stones, he pressed the silver cloth with the 3 rings into the hands of Elrond. "Guard them," Celebrimbor whispered, blood staining his lips. "Never let Sauron's shadow claim them. They are our last hope of preserving beauty in Middle-earth." And with that, the final scion of Feanor in Middle-earth gave up his spirit, his final breath mingling with the ashen wind. The survivors fled north and west, guided by Elrond, who carried the 3. Though battered and in sorrow, they found shelter in a hidden valley that would come to be known as Imlan Ladris, Rivendell. There, under Elrond's leadership, the scattered refugees of Rivendell began to rebuild what they could at ancient lore. For a time, Sauron, having broken Eregion's defenses, marched on toward other realms, believing the elves' power shattered. Yet, unbeknownst to him, the 3 rings had been successfully forged without his knowledge or influence. Lacking the direct link to the One, these rings could not be turned against their bearers. Over the years, they would become potent instruments of preservation and healing. Galadriel, from Lorinand, reached out in pity to the refugees, and over time one of the three found its way into her keeping. Another was taken by Gil-galad, High King in Lindon, who recognized the need for a strong bastion against Sauron's onslaught. The third ring remained with Elrond in Imladris. Each ring, wielded by noble hearts, became a bulwark against the slow decay and malice that threatened Middle-earth. Thus, while the immediate cost was grievous, Ostin Adel burned and Celebrimbor was lost, Sauron's triumph was not as complete as it might have been. The forging of a single set of purely elvish rings, beyond his dominion, ensured that the Free Peoples had a hidden defense. Gil-galad's alliances would endure, ultimately leading to the formation of the last alliance of elves and men. Even among men, though 9 fell to darkness, the quiet rumor of Celebrimbor's wards allowed some to cast off dominion. Not all who received the 9 were willing slaves. The seeds of resistance were sown far and wide. Dwarves, resistant in mind to Sauron's direct mastery, found that the greed stoked by their rings could be tempered by the knowledge that Celebrimbor's people had refused any share in forging them. Small acts of defiance multiplied, even if overshadowed by the might of Mordor. In this speculative tapestry, as the ages wore on, the Free Peoples discovered that while Sauron's power was formidable, it did not hold an unbreakable leash upon all hearts. For Celebrimbor had never yielded the secrets of elvish craftsmanship to him. The forging of the One Ring proceeded, yes, but the mastery it exerted over the other rings was not total. The 9 wraiths fell fully under its sway, but the 7, while stirring greed, did not break the Dwarven Lords entirely. The 3 remained untouched by the Dark Lord's designs. When the War of the Last Alliance was eventually joined, Elendil and Gil-galad faced Sauron upon the slopes of Orodruin. The exiled Númenóreans and the Noldorin host fought with the combined might of mortal valor and the intangible grace of the 3. Though Celebrimbor was long since slain, the memory of his refusal and the craft of his wards lived on in the hearts of those who battled in that final stand. It is said that the swirl of powers in that war was subtly different from what it might have been otherwise. The direct confrontation with Sauron was no less perilous, but the intangible advantage of the 3 untainted rings allowed Gil-galad and Elendil to press the Dark Lord more fiercely. In the end, as in the commonly told tales, the One Ring was cut from Sauron's hand. Yet the forging of the untainted 3 meant that the elves had not inadvertently bound themselves to Sauron's fate. Their realms, though eventually waning with the passage of time, endured strong through the early centuries of the Third Age, preserving a measure of beauty that might otherwise have faded faster. Had Celebrimbor accepted Sauron's help from the beginning, all the rings forged by the Gwaithai Madain might have fallen to Sauron's dominion. But in this imagined tale, Celebrimbor's steadfast refusal paved the way for a glimmer of hope amid the gloom. Though the price was steep, the ruin of Eregion and the death of its lord, the cost of forging those dominion-bearing rings in league with Anatar would have been far greater still. In the Fourth Age, after the One Ring was finally unmade in the fires of Mount Doom, lawmasters pieced together scraps of knowledge from the hidden archives of Imladris. They found references to Celebrimbor's refusal and marveled at the single decision that rippled across centuries, shaping battles and forging alliances. They saw in him a cautionary lesson that evil, though fair in guise, can be withstood by those with the will to stand firm, no matter the lure of greater craft or knowledge. Thus, in this speculative corner of the grand tapestry, the memory of Celebrimbor endures. No statue marks his grave, for Eregion is a silent ruin. Yet in every leaf of Lothlorien that gleams long in springtime, in the hidden valley of Rivendell that offers succor to weary travelers, and in the shining harbor of Lindon that stands as a shield against the west, one senses the echo of that once mighty craftsman's spirit. His gift was not just rings free of Sauron's shadow, but the enduring lesson that the noblest creations are those woven free of malevolence, in harmony with the flame imperishable that Eru set within the hearts of his children. Would that more had heeded Celebrimbor's example in the days of old. Yet, even one bright star can guide sailors across stormy seas. So it is with the memory of Celebrimbor, the smith unbowed, whose legacy would reverberate through the turning of the ages.